views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Straight ahead on this edition of Perspectives, we go front and center with the issue of gun control. The recent shootings have really raised questions about gun control and how we can better handle these in local neighborhoods. Coming up on this show, I'll talk with two very special guests who tackle this issue and more right here on Perspectives with yours truly, Daren Jaime.
What's on your mind? Express what's on your mind. What's on your mind?
Anything relevant to life, you bring it to the table. Whether you make a move solo or a movement with a stable. No fables, you speak on your decisions. Cause in the long run, it's your voice, your views, your vision. Keeping it real with many messages for you to know. This ain't radio, but DJ runs the show. Entertainment, he rocks it. Politics, he locks it. The host with the most would handle any topic. Don't forget to share your perspective with shines of light. Cause it might make a difference in someone else's life.
Make a difference in someone's life. Express what's in your heart and your mind. Share your perspective.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Perspectives. I am Daren Jaime, and of course, you can watch us every week here on Bronx Channel 67, where we bring you that news, that information, the perspectives of many people with regards to many different topics. We go from anything from current events to just entertainment, you name it, you can find it right here on Perspectives. We encourage you to stay connected to us right here on the show. How do you do that? Well, we've got social media platforms. BronxNet TV, that is our station's social media platform. Then we also have our personal platform, Daren C. Jaime on Facebook, and then DC Jaime 23 on Instagram and Twitter. There you can find out more information. And then if you want, you can also get some inspiration as well. Coming up, we go front and center with the issue of gun control on today's show. The debate about gun control is back on the hearts and minds of Americans, especially after the recent mass shootings in Boulder and Atlanta. Here on Perspectives, that we join the nation in mourning and also mourning the deaths of those who've been affected by gun violence as well as their families. And our condolences go out to everyone who's lost someone and someone who's been affected by this. Yet while our nation debates what action needs to be taken, we can say that one Bronx local program is in the trenches, dealing with the root cause of gun violence in our communities. I welcome David Caba, Senior Program Director of Bronx Rises Against Gun Violence, better known as B.R.A.G. And then also we welcome Minguez Garcia, Director of Government and Community Relations for Good Shepherd Services. And we welcome you both right here to Perspectives. Glad to have you both sharing with us.
Thank you, Darren.
Glad. Annie, I'll start off with you ladies first on this. I mean, first of all, give me your, when you hear and you see what's taking place in Boulder, when you see what's taking place in Atlanta, reminiscent of Columbine, reminiscent of Washington, D.C., seeing congressmen being fired upon on an open softball field, and yet again, the issue of gun control. Give me your thoughts when you see another mass shooting occur. I think we got you muted. You're going to have to unmute.
If we have to hold yet another moment of silence, and the one thing that I was saying yesterday at one of our rallies was that this kind of violence is happening in our backyards. This kind of violence is happening in our communities every day. And when we see it in hate crimes and white supremacy crimes, we have to call it what it is. We have been in a pandemic, but we have also it's been a double pandemic. It's the injustices and the racial injustice that so many communities of color face on a day-to-day basis, not only with violence, but just the everyday of being criminalized because of poverty. It has been very difficult to support families during this time of this is happening, and this is also happening to you. And we have been really struggling to have the conversations around how do we hold space for people during this time. This year has been extremely difficult.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, and I'm going to bring David in here because what you spoke about was actually what I was going to ask David about. Because, David, when we see these mass shootings, obviously, we continuously say, and we are sincere, our thoughts and prayers and condolences are extended to families and victims. But then on the other side, while that's been extended, for those people who are in the trenches like you every day, it's an opportunity for people to see what you really wrestle with and what you deal with. Maybe they're not mass casualties on one particular day, but there could be mass casualties throughout the course of a whole year. So give me your sentiment when you see a mass shooting, and then give us a local context.
Absolutely. Thank you for the time, and I definitely want to extend my condolences to the families of these tragedies that have occurred, both the recent one and those in the past. But this is a situation that we've been dealing with for pretty much ever. The communities that we serve in B.R.A.G, which is, program of Good Shepherd Services, and we're part of the mayor's crisis management system. This is what we've been doing for years, but our communities have been inundated with shootings and violence for decades. However, since our inception in 2014, we have done tremendous amount of works in reducing that by achieving 1, 2, 3 years without shootings, 5 years without homicides. Our program works. But what a lot of people don't see is the work that we do on a regular basis that stops it from even getting to that level, from escalating to where people are shot. Back in 2014, our first shooting, 5 people were shot in our first shooting, right in the middle of our catchment area, which is our hot zone. All right, since that time, again, we've had that success, but we deal with this on a daily basis, and we stop fights. We stop when weapons are pulled. We're out there late at night, 2 o'clock in the morning. We're on call and show up when something happens. We get a phone call. So that could easily turn into a situation here in New York City where we have mass casualties.
Yeah. And I want to bring Annie in because I want to talk about the work of Good Shepherd Services and B.R.A.G. I didn't do enough justice in connecting the dots for our viewers, but tell us a little bit about the work of Good Shepherd Services and B.R.A.G.
You got muted again.
Good Shepherd Services is a multi-service agency. So it ranges. So like David said, David is our senior program director over our Bronx Rise Against Gun Violence programs. And we have 3 programs right now across the Bronx. And we also have a foster care agency, after school programs. We have in-school supports. And all of these programs really are surrounding the families that we work with, both in the Bronx, in Brooklyn, as well as in Manhattan. But we also have programs for young people experiencing homelessness, for young people who need supportive housing, for young people also who cannot live in a home with a family and instead live with us in a group home. And that's the work. And I mean, right now, as everyone knows, the preliminary budget for the mayor did come out. And a lot of our work has been around just restoring some of the extreme cuts that we saw last year to after school, to community schools, to programs that are supporting young people that are over age and undercredited. And so a lot of that work is happening right now. And we are watching very closely what's happening at the federal level, because we want to know how the city is going to be using those federal dollars to not only restore, but strengthen many of these programs that are really creating supports for young people right now and that are deterring them and keeping them in places that are safe so that they're not experiencing violence in the communities, including those of B.R.A.G. We know that the mayor just announced an extension and an expansion of the Cure Violence program into 3 additional boroughs. And we know that this model works. It's evidence-based, but also this team worked around the clock even during COVID, because when COVID hit, they still responded, and they responded as first responders. And phones were still ringing, and this team was still doing that work.
David, what's been, what we say, the secret sauce? Because when you look at these shootings, they've reduced right here in our borough, the borough of the Bronx specifically. And I'm speaking for those who may not know where we're located across New York City, but in the Bronx, shootings have dropped dramatically. And from your perspective, a lot of that comes to groundwork.
Secret sauce is credible messengers, Daren. At the end of the day, when it comes to our communities, the Good Shepherd is in, and make no mistake, we have 80 programs in the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Manhattan. And we get deeper into our work in these communities. And you can't get any deeper than attacking gun violence and violence in general, because it's not just gun violence. We deal with all forms of violence. And when we hire these credible messengers, they're from these very communities. They're recruited, they're trained, they're taught, and they get deployed in a strategic fashion to where the actual hotspots and the hot zones are, where they're from, where they're credible, where they're respected, where they're listened to, because they have seen the transformation of this individual. So it works. There is a thing about, hashtag defund the police. Well, I like to say hashtag refund the community. Every time you deploy services, you redistribute these funds to agencies like Good Shepherd Services, like B.R.A.G, like the many community-based organizations in our borough. You see these results. It works. And I will point us in the direction of schools. Schools is a huge area that we need to start focusing on, because prevention needs to happen. Where does that happen? In middle schools. We got to get in those middle schools before these youngsters turn into these teenagers that end up engaged in high-risk activities.
And when we talk about the young people, we talk about the work that goes on to really do deterrence and really stop this. Annie and David, I want you to answer this question. I've sat in meetings before, and when we talk about funding programs, we know that sometimes programs to youth are the first ones that are cut. We know that there's a lot of programs that are cut. But as I've often said to people before, when it comes to doing this kind of work, there's a particular dynamic. You're not always going to get the statistics, because if you break up a fight, or if you intervene with somebody who decides not to take out violence on somebody, those things are not always measurable statistics that you could actually say, John did not shoot Raheem. Those don't show up on paper the way that people would like to see them in order to fund. So talk to us about the work. And even though some things may not always show up on statistics, there's still some work that's still, not some, a lot of work that's being done that sometimes gets discredited and discounted.
Yeah, I guess I'll start and to say that David can talk about exactly that, though, because David is tracking those specific stats of like what is happening. I think we have this misconception about what quote unquote success is. There's little things that are happening on a daily basis with loving and caring and consistent individuals who are touching young people every day in these programs and creating relationships and trusting relationships that help them graduate school, help them find a job, help them find a trade, help them get up in the morning, help them deal with their mental health. All of these things might not be on a paper of like these many referrals were done, but all of these things help. And when they are the first programs to be eliminated, I mean, we're fighting back elimination to middle school. And like David just mentioned, like the work in schools is so important. So yes, we have work to do. We have to fight back these cuts, and our young people need to be surrounded with as many resources as possible, because every day and any intervention counts.
David, let me do this. I'm going to take a quick break and come back and talk to you. You'll get the first comment following up on what we just spoke about when we return right here on Perspectives. We're talking about gun violence. We're talking about gun control. We've got a national issue, but we're dealing with it from a local perspective. Be right back.
New Yorkers have mastered existing in crowded places and walking fast. Now is the time to master social distancing. Social distancing means creating more personal space between yourself and others, at least 6 feet. Creating more physical distance protects yourself and other New Yorkers from the spread of coronavirus. To do your part, stay home. Stay connected through calls, texts, and video chats. If you have to go out for essentials like food and medicine, avoid crowds and put space between yourself and other people standing in line. If you go outside, just remember to keep 6 feet of space between yourself and others. This is not just about you. It's also about protecting the most vulnerable and preserving the health of essential workers who are on the front lines. If you're feeling overwhelmed, connect with counselors at NYC Well. Text COVID to 692-692 for real-time updates, or visit nyc.gov/coronavirus.
back here on Perspectives, resuming our conversation. The shootings in Atlanta and also Boulder bring to mind the local aspect. How do we deal with things on a local level? Of course, there are national shootings, there are mass shootings, and thanks be to God, they're once in a while. But as they're increasing and the casualties increase, we also know that here locally, a lot of things continue to plague our community: gun violence, street violence. So, David, we were talking before the break about funding, and sometimes in a metrics and statistics driven place, people like to see those numbers. But the work that you do doesn't always translate into numbers, because if you save one life, that's major and huge all by itself.
Yes, one life all on its own is a miracle, right? This is what we talk about a lot of the times. Say one life is a miracle. But I want to be sure to mention that we do track. This is not some sort of program where we get gangsters and give them a pamphlet and go out there and save the world. This is a highly evidence-based model that came out of Chicago back in 2000 that there's been deployed nationally and internationally, and specifically here in New York. New York is the largest cure violence provider in the world. And as far as B.R.A.G is concerned, we track things like de-escalation, interruptions, mediations. We have meetings with two factions to come to the determination what the issue is, what the beef is, so it doesn't escalate into some sort of massive war that's going on with a lot of casualties due to violent traumas like gun violence and stabbings and beatings. And so when we track these, make no mistake, there's evidence, there's data, there's statistics that we capture on a monthly basis, year after year, that we can show to demonstrate the effectiveness of our work. But also, just as importantly, is we work with each outreach worker. They work with 10 to 15 high-risk young people, moving them away from that violent mindset, those violent activities in the streets, toward a peaceful, productive lifestyle. That's another area that we measure as well. If you want to crunch the numbers so that we can talk about funding and how it needs to continue to be refunded and actually expanded, we can show you what the cost savings are. It's tremendous amount of cost savings. But more importantly, it's about these young lives that we move in the right direction so that they can actually realize a tomorrow, a bright future.
Andy, give me your thoughts about this when we talk about really dealing with gun violence, and we talk about dealing with these mass shootings, and we see it happen in local communities. It's frustrating, it's sad, it's tragic, but from your perspective, what has been the difference maker in David's success and what we're seeing with Cure Violence?
Yeah, what I would say is that, one of the goals of Cure Violence is really to change the norms around how we respond to violence, how we desensitize ourselves around violence, and also like how do communities come together to really solve the issues that are happening, the root causes in their communities, to be able to fight back the gun violence and any violence really that's happening in their communities. So David does a lot of work in the community, meeting with other community stakeholders, and it really is a community-led effort. It's not a Good Shepherd effort. It's a Bronx Rises Against Gun Violence effort. And there are 23 sites across the city that are doing just that, really embedding themselves in the community and saying, let's look at what it is that we need to do. But, these communities cannot do that without resources. So we, like David always says, like you can give someone, if you tell them, give me the gun, you have to be able to tell them that you have a job, that you have a resource, that you have some other way for them to be able to make money. And I think that that's the piece that we continue to say, is that we can try to solve many of these problems, but we're fighting back historical disinvestments in our communities that have led to many of the conditions of which we live in today.
Insider trading, David, give us the inside look. Why are young people really taking to these guns? What's the root cause of we're seeing this gun violence, particularly among youth? What can you tell us?
So I can tell you that when we are provided the resources, amazing what we can do. And when we do these events where we partner with the community, we partner with the young people, they come out in droves and take full advantage of it. So then what happened last summer? Of course, we had the pandemic. Of course, we had the tragedy with George Floyd being murdered in Minneapolis. And then what happens? Funding starts to get cut. To whom? You mentioned it yourself a little while ago, Darren. Our programs like ours, programs like the ones that run in Good Shepherd and other community-based agencies in the city of New York. And who are these programs? For young people who get most impacted. And what do? Instead of coming to B.R.A.G and all the other programs that we have at Good Shepherd, they end up on the street corners, right? And we all know what happens on the street corners, Darren, right? The
Right.
element that's there is gonna sort of say, I got something for you, right? I got something for you, right? And some money to put in your pocket. But how is that money gonna get put into your pocket, right? These high risk activities that we all know about, right? And so then people ask, oh, so well, why? We live in the Bronx. This is the boogie down, right? We all know what's happening here with the disparities in health and education, employment, housing. I can go on and on and on and on and on. But then you go and cut funding to these programs. The youth depend on us. They got a place to come to. We have anywhere from 45 to 75 youth coming through our doors on a daily basis engaged. We have the community coming out and getting engaged. And so when you already have these issues that have been pervasive for years, now you throw in pandemic, you throw in the George Floyd and the social and racial unrest, and here we are, right? Perfect recipe, right? The storm. And so we've been combating that since that day up until this moment in time. When you go into our hot zones, our catchment areas, it's a very different world from outside of that. So we need to spread that piece that we have in our catchments. How? By expanding our programming.
Yeah. You talked about credible messengers earlier, David. Who are the credible messengers that the young people receive, that those who are involved in the gangs receive? Because, I can roll down, but and they'll say, hey, this guy on Channel 67, but that doesn't make me a credible messenger. Who are the credible messengers?
Got you. So real simple. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. We're out there canvassing, walking up and down our neighborhoods and teams. And you got Nelly and you got JoJo, and they come across a young person who is in a conflict with someone else, pointing a weapon at that other person. When they turn to Nelly and JoJo, they know Nelly and JoJo, right? And these are street names, right? Because they know us that way, right? And they'll say, what are you doing here? And he says, before you do that, let us talk to you. Let us holler at you for a second. Because once you do that, what comes next is all the consequences behind it. Let's do that. But if you're from, the suburbs, that weapon is going to get turned on you. And now you're the one that's in that situation. And that's what I mean about credibility. Our people are from these neighborhoods, all right, have been there and done that, already suffered a lot of those consequences. Thank God, not the final one, which is, unfortunately, a homicide, right? The cemetery, the morgue. So they're able to come and give back, right? With full training and all, they come and give back. And the young people watch us and see that, and they remember, wait, weren't you the famous person that, in this block on Walton, over there on, 226th Street, where we're at, or over there in Kingsbridge? And so they listen. This is the effectiveness of our credible messengers. They are individuals who have that voice. It's a reach that no other workforce on this planet has that the credible messengers have.
Yeah. And when I think about young people, I think about they listen, and they listen to those people who are in the trenches. And you got to be in the trenches in order to get that kind of, to be able to get that kind of respect. Talk to me about what you have coming up and how people can really pay attention to what's going on.
Awesome. And again, credibility is we look like them, walk like them, talk like them, eat the same foods, live where they live. Annie was the first credible messenger, honestly. She's the one that recruited me. And it takes people of color sometimes to bring that message and that noise. So what we got going on is you can come see us at any one of our offices. We're at 1 East Fordham Road, second floor. We're at 825 East 233rd Street. And we're also at 1995 Jerome Avenue. We have music recording studios. We have therapeutic services. We have educational vocational services, hospital response. You name it, a plethora. We're in 3 different schools, middle schools and high schools, where we do this work. We are engaged in community events, multiple community events every single month. Is a requirement that we do. We put it on blast in our social medias. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and come and see what we do, see how we work.
Annie, how do people get in touch with Good Shepherd?
Yes, want to make sure that I say that we're going to be having a series of rallies. Today we have a rally for the supports for older youth and young and undercredited older youth. Those in-school supports at 6 p.m. tonight. But you can find all of our events on Good Shepherd Services NYC Facebook page, and stay tuned for more information. Also, 1995 Morris Avenue, not Morris Avenue, I'm sorry, on Morris Avenue in Fordham. We also have an office there that's doing counseling services. So be in touch with us at 212-243-7070 if you need any support.
Andy, David, I want to thank you guys both for being here on Perspective. Certainly glad to have you sharing with us. David, we've been doing this for a minute and having this conversation. I'm glad to see the progress and the impact that you continue to make in the community. Sometimes people don't take the time to say thank you, want to take the time to say thank you, because while it may be a job, there's some people who do it from the heart, even though it's a job and even when it's not a job. I know the work that you're doing and the impact that you're having. Thank you so much to you, David. And also thank you, Andy, as well for being that credible messenger to get a brother like David back on the block to take care of business. So thank you both for being with us here on Perspectives.
All right. Thank you. Salute, Darren.
Thank you.
All righty. All righty. Well, listen, everybody, I want to let you know that we're about out of time here for today's show. Thank you for joining us. Listen, we want to let you know that in the wake of these shootings, it's important for us to pay attention to the things that are going on nationally, but we also want to pay attention to things that are going on locally. Every day, people are affected by gun violence. People are affected by gang violence, and we need to do our best to support the people who have boots on the ground. As I said, credible messengers. But in order to be a credible messenger needs to be armed with the proper ammunition. No, not guns. The ammunition that we talk of is funding and resources and access to resources. So as we continue to talk about budgets, as we continue to talk about what's important, as we continue to talk about what needs to be funded, let us remember those who are really in the boots, in the trenches, taking care of our children, our loved ones. Because here's the end result. Anytime there's a homicide and somebody loses their life, it's not just that individual that loses their life. It's the one that's been affected, the family of the victim. Not only the family of the victim, the family of the offender. And that extends out and extends out and extends out. And we know it continues to go on. So let's do our best to support those doing the work. Most of all, let's do our best to put an end to gun violence and gang violence. That's my perspective. We encourage you to share your perspective. You never know. It just might make a difference in somebody else's life. Take care and God bless.
Anything relevant to life, you bring it to the table.